I'm going to finish off now. I desperately want you all to get out to get a little bit of sunshine before the day's over. I don't know about you, I've got vitamin D deficiency. We've got about 20 minutes, so I'm going to immediately invite our distinguished panel of guests up to talk about how what this taught us about measuring the true value of television. So we please welcome up to the stage, we have Keld Nielsen of Kantar Media, Mark Gall of Alphonso Inc., Liz Duff of Total Media, and we've also invited Rick back to the stage. Round of applause, please. Now, normally what I would have done is asked each of our distinguished members of the panel to sort of give us a brief intro. I'm very keen to get to some of the key issues that have been presented, not just in this session, but across the last 2 days. So I'm going to basically start with the question, and then we'll go through the panel. And the first question I have is somebody who's basically been raised on insight and research and measurement. So I'm very aware of data and its provenance and its quality. So the question I have for the panel, I think I'm going to ask the two measurement people first, and then the planner, and then Rick, who sort of helps to represent the broadcasters, this question. Is the data we have and the metrics we produce from it fit for purpose in allowing us to understand and identify the true and complete value of television? And let's start with Keld.
Yeah, okay. For television, I think the very short answer is yes. However, we also see over the last, say, 5 to 6 years that we have been pushed to the limits about what we can and can't cope with. So, for instance, the challenge is that you will see a lot of advertising with 0 ratings because of the fragmentations and the proliferation of devices, etc., etc. So that is one challenge, and the other challenge is the measurement on the online TV viewing. So where we are in Kantar Media, we're talking about TV and extended TV and total video, and the extended TV is the inclusion of the broadcaster's content on other devices. And that is where you see the development is happening around the world at the moment. So taking it from TV to total video or whatever and that is yet early days, but still has been implemented in countries like Holland and Norway and Denmark and others. So we are there, I would say, and the metrics are there. Interesting presentation about the RPD data. That is still theory, taking it into the currency yet, but I think we will get there eventually as well.
And do you think when we do get there, the net outcome in terms of perceptions of TV's value to the advertiser will rise or reduce?
My hope is banging the drum for audience measurement. I hope that it will rise, because it's a question about, television has spent 4 decades close to creating a gold standard. And we got to be very, very careful not to dilute that gold standard. So if you start filling in non-audited data or data with, say, low quality or lower quality, that will take that gold standard a notch down, and we got to be very, very careful of doing that. So that's the key in my work.
Interesting. Mark, I'm going to ask you, because Alphonso Inc., I've never heard of before, but you're actually already in this world in terms of integrating this data, making it, across the board rather than just looking at the individual parts. What are your insights from having seen that sort of data and put it into action?
Sure. So if you take a look at TV just 2 years ago, or even 18 months ago, very few people in the States, at least, very few people would say that TV could really be an effective measure. You can really effectively measure ROI with TV. 2 years ago, right? Today, you're able to do that. So literally, TV is able to match on digital on ROI. because now we're able to do some things like, understand what's on TV, but then follow in major number of TV households in the US, 35 million or so, how many people have seen the ad, right? And then how many people actually went to the website, downloaded the app, went to the store, went to the dealership. So now effectively you have that ROI. Effectively you can actually reverse that ROI and start with CRM data, bringing that CRM data in with IP addresses and email addresses and things like that, match it against our IP addresses, right, in 1 out of every 3 TV households, and actually do the media planning going backwards. You can actually look back and see of your most profitable customers, what have they been watching? And what we have found is that the high touch, the very expensive shows that we've been talking about earlier actually have a really big kickoff, have a really big result. And one other thing is that just to speak to what Simon was talking about with building brands, we did a study with General Motors in the United States, and we looked at the fourth quarter. We took a look at every ad for automotive, whether it be an Asian car company, European car company, American car company, every ad and every type of ad, whether it be a call to action ad or a branding ad, what have you. And we did location data, so from all the ads to actually who went to the store, the dealership. And what we found is the types of ads that actually drove more to the dealership was not the call to action, not the $700 cash back, not the APR, which is a financing term of 2.9%, but it was the beautiful ad and the positioning and the music. That delivered more folks to the store. And similarly with Subaru, same thing. When they were doing their community activation and connecting with CNN heroes, that drove more people to the dealership than, hi, come on in, buy a Subaru, it's cheap this month, please, right? So we're able to do that, TV to ROI.
Interesting, because there's some issues there about creativity and placement and context, which sometimes sort of very deep micrometrics tend to ignore or not to value enough. They're some of the more human, emotional, perhaps, elements of TV's value, and yet you're finding, that sort of deep measurement of people's behavior and exposure and so on is unlocking those.
And the lift is much higher than just on the call to action. So those typical automotive, highly, very expensive $1 million plus ads that say, $700 cash back, it's those beautiful trips through the Alps or things like that in that video creative that actually drove people there. And that music, certainly.
So plenty to play with, Liz, when it comes to actually laying down the plan and putting it into action and evaluating it. What are you finding in terms of how your role is changing and the tools that you have available to make it count? How are you finding that's changing your perception of TV as a platform and as a medium?
I think in some ways it's massively changing it, in some ways it's not at all, which I know is a bit of a sit on the fence answer. But I think from a lot of what people have said over the last couple of days, in some ways, the power of TV is that massive message, the big coverage piece, and that emotional connection, and that's not going to change. And I think if you go too far down the line of going, okay, what's exactly the data we can get on every single program, every single audience, let's target it down to the nth degree, I think that's when telly starts facing the same problems that we're actually now seeing in digital. Whereby you're following down this path of targeting, whereby you might be chasing the cheapest way to reach an audience who aren't necessarily the ones that you're after, or the ones that are the most value to your brand. So I think as an agency and talking to clients, we should be very careful about, yes, we love using the data that shows TV is really effective. Of course we do. And we talk to them about sort of the long-term effect of TV and how the data shows that. But what we don't want to do is go too far down that other route of actually targeting too much because of the data.
Yeah. I mean, that brings in this whole question, which again has been addressed several times during the course of the last 2 days, between the power of reach versus targeting. And it seems to me that you've got to almost, on a kind of an analog basis, you've got to kind of keep that balance in your head all the time.
And I think we've seen that even over the last 12 months with some clients, actually. And I think the question actually about is TV undervalued, is digital undervalued? When we look at what our actual clients are doing in the market, we've seen some who have, in the last couple of years, shifted away from TV because they're targeting younger demographic. And actually, this is where the numbers don't help us. And the numbers are saying that young audiences are moving away from TV. So we've had clients who've followed that. We've got a couple of examples within our agency of clients who've done that, then found that their brand metrics aren't going the way they want them to, and have now returned back to TV. So they went with the targeted option. It didn't work. Now they're going back to the actual, we need to talk to everyone about our brand. So again, it's a combination, I think.
Of course, you know, we forget sometimes we spend so much time looking at metrics and thinking, how can we show what does work? Sometimes learning what doesn't work is equally important to the whole mix. And Rick, when you talk, I was really kind of enthused by the fact that although we're talking about cold, hard numbers, there are issues like context and creativity and emotional connection, which perhaps have always been left behind a bit in the debate where numbers that can't measure those things come into play. How do you feel? Are we sort of bridging that gap between the cold hard numbers and the warm human elements of this?
I think the way we bridge that gap is by trying to prove out the ROI for those concepts, right? We try to prove out the ROI for emotionally engaged shows. We prove out the ROI of quality shows. We prove out the ROI for the audience size and things like that. Right? We bring the data and the tools of the digital future to bear on some of these concepts that have been largely assumed by our business for so long, just to prove them out again or not. If the data disproves them, then we should adjust accordingly. But I think it's hard to do that today. It can be done in a study with aggregated anonymized data, or it could be done on the client end, right? Because they have the outcome data, right? The clients have so this is, I think, one of the big challenges to your question of can TV be appropriately evaluated, is that there's asymmetric information. The clients have the outcome data. The media companies do not. So if outcome is ultimately how you value the advertising, and only one side knows what the outcome is, then it's hard for the marketplace to appropriately evaluate the value.
Interesting. I mean, we do have companies like Ubiquity, we saw earlier. The IPA did their meta-analysis. I think ARF in the States have done something similar. So we do have a more synchronous comparison.
On a large-scale aggregated basis, not on a campaign-by-campaign, client-by-client basis, and yet that's how we transact.
Right. Now that leads me to my next big question, which is, we've heard a lot over the last 2 days about the two different roles of television in a way for the advertiser, which is short-term activation and long-term brand building. And again, that's been one of those kind of tensions in the system that seems to, the more metrics we've had, seems to become more and more of an issue in terms of where do we get the balance right. And there's a phrase I've been hearing a lot recently, including at this particular forum, which is planning, not just TV, but in this case, planning TV according to effectiveness rather than based on audience. Now, my question is this. I can see how you could introduce effectiveness planning into TV, certainly in terms of the price paid in the short term. I'm not quite sure how that could apply to the long-term brand building role, which most of the sources we've heard have suggested that's the biggest part of TV's contribution. So I think I'm going to start with the planner. Liz, how do we reconcile that?
I don't think you can. Not to be negative, but I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head of what the problem is. Yes, we should definitely be measuring effectiveness, and brands are, of course, completely right to be saying, I need to know how effective my media is. But as you say, particularly with TV, a lot of it is a very long-term measure. And, you know, you can't trade on something that's going to take 12 24 months to actually see an outcome from it. You can definitely plan on it, I think, but I don't think you're going to reach a place where you've got a model that's 100% traded on an effective price. I think you can do it, and this is why it's a sort of a dual answer. You can do it much easier in sort of the more direct response model. Of course you can, and sort of we do it already, and you look what works and you focus your money in that direction very quickly, and then you can see the sales houses getting, you know, rewarded for what is working. That ignores the longer term effect, as we just discussed. So longer term brand building metrics, I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon.
Can I disagree?
Please do.
Yeah, you can't.
Gently. I mean, I think we've shown that it can be done, like ThinkBox, game theory, the work that ABC and Accenture did. It's all, you know, attacking that problem. And maybe this is naive of me, and if it is, tell me. But it seems to me if we optimize for the long run, the short run ultimately takes care of itself. There may be some pain, you know, if there may be some pain if optimizing for the long run leaves us diminished in the first couple of years. But if we optimize for the long run, then ultimately we're optimizing for brand health forever. And you know, and there's the studies that we've all seen are all sort of a 3-year event horizon. There's nothing magical about 3 years. It's just that's the length of the data set, right? So if we continue to optimize for the long run over more than just 3 years forever, then I think we're optimizing for sales ultimately, and that's the goal, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think what it sort of doesn't take account of is sort of the realities of the economic situations that we're seeing a lot of our clients face, I suppose. And actually, we talk to our clients and we show them exactly that chart about short-term and long-term, and you know, we talk to them about that a lot. A lot of the challenges we've had, particularly again in the last couple of years, is clients are seeing their budgets squeezed. They, of course, care about the long-term brand effects, and they all understand that sort of longer-term model. There are situations whereby sort of the economic reality of it is you need to drive the short-term in order to secure budget or secure the success of your business or actually the life of your business to be able to move on to that sort of a longer-term step. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. I think we have to be realistic as well.
I think that's a fair point. It sort of skates past the fact that some of the most successful companies out there, like Amazon, have been completely focused on the long term and let the short term work itself out. And yet that strategy, you're absolutely right, that strategy falls apart when the CFO has to hit a number in this quarter.
I mean, just to dovetail to that, what we've seen when we look at the creatives to getting people to actually go to the store, or go to this dealership, or go to the online site, wherever, we're asking for these ads to do a lot of things. This 30-second or 15-second ad has to get across the branding, has to get across the community involvement, has to get across great customer service. We're asking a lot of these commercials. So what we have found is that the more you put into the commercial and the more you put into prime time versus early fringe or daytime or overnight, you're able to get those branding bits across much easier, and that actually drives store. You know, store involvement, store connections, going to the dealership, all those types of things. But you really have to put a lot of effort into the commercial. If you need to hit a number, and certainly the brand managers have to, and it's, you know, the 15th of the month, and you got to sell another X number of widgets or units around, you're going to think cashback red tag sale. What we've found is that is actually hurtful in the long run and the short run. The long run thinking, community, branding, customer service in that 30-second commercial or 15 actually delivers the short term.
Can you, from that short-term delivery, can you accurately model what the long-term benefits would be as well, or are they two separate questions?
I defer to the expertise here.
I think you can. We certainly do it for our clients. It's not, and I think Ubiquity said it earlier, you can't build a perfect sort of model and predict it. You have to build out from what you know. We quite often work with sort of new emerging clients who are new brands, so you can't base it on past experience. You have to look at category insights, and that's when looking at whole categories and what other advertisers have been learning and what category learnings are really important. So you can do it. But it's being conscious that there isn't a perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
But yes, there's definitely a correlation, and we see that sort of across the board.
Excellent. So I get the impression effectiveness, whether long-term or short-term or both, is increasingly part of the planning process, but not necessarily part of the trading agreement.
There's definitely a disconnect, and I think particularly when you look at the TV model. We're trading off, in the UK, we're trading off a TV market model that's been around for years and is based on a TV market that isn't in any way structured how it was when the model was set up. So there's definitely a disconnect there, and I think it's going to involve a massive shift to the whole market before we can start actually trading on effectiveness because of the way that the TV market at the moment is priced.
Okay, excellent. Keld, I mean, Kantar obviously got a huge number of different providers of metric data. From what you're seeing across that range, is TV's true value being recognised already? And if not, what do we have to do to make sure it's integrated into the overall assessment?
There's been some quite interesting views today about whether it has been valued, and I especially like the view of your point about the search. Why do people search? Because they've seen the ad. So I think the answer to that, at least if I just think of if I think of the value that is put on TV for audience measurement, there's definitely some add-ons that needs to be taken into account. However, I don't think we have, for the time being, we don't have the silver bullet that will give us that solution, but there are some very good points. So to some extent, I think it's quite undervalued. And people also seem to forget, when you look at the advertising expenditure, the whole growth of advertising expenditure, a lot of that digital growth there is actually video, and is there the game, it's video on mobile, and it's a paraphrasing, but content is still king. So if the broadcasters really do understand to produce content, even short-term content, they will also win the YouTube battle, and that's where we as a research company have to be able to measure the whole portfolio of that. Yeah. And that is where a lot of money is being put at the moment. The challenge is that it is relatively expensive to measure, and the increase of the audiences is very low at the moment. Yeah. So that's where the battle is right now.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that here we are with all this data, all this intelligence, and yet we're still striving for more and actually better integration, better intelligence to make these decisions. So we've still got some work to do by the sounds of things. But I've got all this talent here with me. I've been monopolising them for the past 20 minutes. I think I should throw it out to the audience. Does anybody have any questions or burning issues or statements they'd like to make?
Where's the bar?
There's Coronas lined up just outside if anybody would like to take one. No? Are we? Where are we? Over there.
Firstly, just like to say thank you, everyone who's pulled this together in the last couple of days. It's been great. It seems to me there's a bit of a black hole in the measurement of TV that's delivered digitally in the living room. Is that a barrier? How can we overcome it? I can illuminate that with an example, if that helps. So I could go home tonight and watch I'm a Celebrity on my smart TV, with five other people, that still counts as one impression to ITV.
So the measurement services are beginning to tackle that. It's by no means perfected. And it does speak to a little bit of a disconnect in a lot of the data we've seen over the past 2 days, right? We've all seen the charts that show young audiences fleeing television, right? And there's no question there's been a decline in the young audience for live linear television. Some of that decline, though, is mitigated by increases in online viewing of those same programs. Now, it doesn't mitigate all of it, but it does flatten the curve a little bit. And it speaks to the problem that you're raising, which is that we don't really have a true picture capturing that digital viewing and adding it back into the live linear viewing to look at total viewing yet. I mean, we have it in bits and pieces, you know, with a little massaging, but we don't really have it as a well understood, well used transaction-based currency metric. So I think that there's room for a little growth there. We're close. We're definitely close, but we're not quite there yet.
Well, let me kick it in then. So from the close, so what we've been able to work with the broadcasters, including ABC and stuff, is from free will, we're able to get the full episode player files, which has IP addresses, and now we're able to match against those IP addresses and actually literally now count from the device IDs as well as attribution. So we're getting there, and it's really showing that the effectiveness that a linear plus full episode player with fewer commercials, at least in the States, right, actually drives more to the store.
Mm. So the black hole's getting less.
Yes.
We've got to be a bit careful just to generalize that we have a black hole, because things are happening around the world. Yes, it's not, for the UK, yes, it's true, but for other markets, we are actually bringing this together in one currency. So you're bringing the online viewing on the mobiles and the tablets and the desktops together with the viewing of the TV screen. That happens in, I can just name 3, Holland, Denmark, Belgium for one, and it is on the move in Turkey, Switzerland, countries like that. So it's not just a black hole sort of internationally.
No, I get that. Any more questions before we? Well, just to finish, I'd like to thank our panel, indeed all our speakers this afternoon. I'd also like to thank you for being incredibly patient and attentive, even. So thanks for that. Where I think we leave this is that actually we've achieved so much in terms of understanding this value and therefore exploiting it to the best of our advertisers' abilities. But we've still got some way to go, which means there will be a future TV advertising forum next year. And to tell us all about it, I'm going to invite Derek back to the stage. But first of all, a round of applause for our panel. Thank you very much.